Maybe. You're welcome to look through some of these papers. These are some of the. Is this loose? No. Well, maybe just on the back of that. We were working on building craft, circular foil craft. This is one of our prototypes, one of our models. And we knew we had to stay under the radar because there was a lot of people with vested interest in petroleum products and in the automobile industry that really didn't want this kind of technology to happen, because what this represented was pure magnetism, not electromagnetism and not acoustical levitation, but pure magnetism. What that means is, honey, could you get the magnet out? And I'll just show them what it is. As you can tell, I'm not well prepared for this, but anyhow, we drove all the way down today. We decided to go ahead and build as many prototypes as we could and try to find interested people that would come together and at least give us an understanding of what we were trying to do. And most of the funding and everything was out of pocket. I was, along with being a technician in the field, and I was working in the shop, and working in the lab and the offices. I was also a gopher. I'd run for hamburgers at night for the engineers that were working on some of the projects. So it was kind of an all-rounded. We had 13 of us that were working on a project. Well. Did I put them in there? Maybe they're. Well, I'm hoping I can find this one particular thing. If I can show you, one picture's worth 10,000 words. But if I can't find it, if you take two circular magnets that have holes in them, you can buy them now at Radio Shack or whatever, and go to Mickey D's or McDonald's and get a straw and put them on opposite where the poles are opposing each other. That power that is in there, that is pure magnetism, and it exists in everything. Every molecule, every nano matter, every nanoparticle of matter is composed of magnetism. And that power is the power that, can't find them? Mm-hmm. Well, anyhow, I was going to show you a demonstration, but I can't find it. But if you get a couple of those magnets and put them upside down and play with them, you'll find that, well, this is a force here, and it's deceived science. They have names for that force, and they say, well, that's just opposing polarity. But as I mentioned earlier, there's a unipolar. There's only one pole that is subdivided or put into the definition of being two poles. Let's see, where can I go?
One of the things in science they never were willing to try to work out the prime, so they gave it a label and went on.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, they did. And I found that, when I started looking into magnetism, I found all these definitions for electricity, like there's a Mr. Watts, there's a Mr. Fahrenheit, there's a Mr. Ampere, there's all these names. We're talking about the same thing, which is electricity. And electricity is produced from magnetic fields. It comes from magnetism. So that's when I did away with all the definitions and labels given to all the different phases of electricity. They're all done in frames of reference. Everything has a frame of reference, and everything is true in its own frame of reference. Just depends on your perception. And we've learned, Marcia and I have learned, that life is really a state of knowing who and what you are, and perception is from the inside out. That we perceive life out here with these little cameras that are vibrating at 24.5 cycles per second. The little shutters are opening and closing, and creating, actually, literally creating this environment that we call reality, which in fact is a reality, but not the only reality. There are many, many, many realities going on all the time in different frequencies. And when you, I don't know how we got off on that, but that's one of the subjects I want to talk about. I'm kind of scattered here.
You were talking about Carr.
Huh?
You were talking about the Carr.
Otis Carr.
Oh, back to Carr. Okay. Okay, so anyway, it was fascinating because Carr worked with Tesla for 3 years, and Tesla told him that he ran into trouble with the money people that were in charge in those days. Was the J.P. Morgan, now known as Chase, filtering down at Chase Bank and so forth. But J.P. Morgan was funding Tesla with some of his ideas, and Tesla was working with Westinghouse and with Edison, and he created and produced the ideas that went into the manufacturing and building of the dynamos at the Niagara Falls, for instance, and just endless things. The Tesla coil, which we use in everything nowadays, it's used everywhere. But he, in Colorado Springs, he had a laboratory. He also had one in New Jersey called Wardenhaw. But in Colorado Springs, he was working on levitation and teleportation. And he found that reaching the resonant frequency, like I mentioned earlier, of any object, you are then free to work with that object, or converse with that object, or move that object, or change that object. And it was then that he found he needed no wires or telephone poles to produce electricity. It could go through the earth, through the ionosphere. He could bounce signals off the ionosphere and create endless forms of safe electricity that wouldn't harm anybody. And all they had to do was stick a pole 30 feet in the ground and 30 feet in the air, and their home as such, and all the electric devices in it could run forever off of free energy, free and abundant energy, which is coming out of the air that we breathe. Basically magnetics again, it gets back to that. But anyway, he went to J.P. Morgan and wanted more funding to design and build a giant transmitter that would resonate around the earth and create these fields of force that would enable us to pick the signals up and have these devices. And J.P. Morgan said, well, there's no money in that. You can't do that because we have the lumber industry making telephone poles and the copper industry making copper wires, and you're an outlaw. You're gonna.
No way to control it.
Huh?
No way to control it.
No way to control it, right?
Yeah, keep others from making the backyard.
So he said that, you would ruin the economic system as such, because you'd give everybody a fishing pole and they could catch their own fish. We wouldn't be able to sell them fish or give them fish for barter anymore. They'd be free. Well, and Tesla said, well, that's right. Someday, eventually, we're going to have to go back to this. This is nothing new. This has gone on for eons and eons back to, it's traced back to the legends and ledgers of Lemuria and Atlantis, where they used these powers long time ago. And their technology got to the point where they eventually destroyed themselves from their ideas because it came around and bit them. So anyway, back into the lab.
And tell them about the sticking your hand.
Oh,
in
yeah.
things. That should be interesting.
Okay, you just we showed that picture.
Mm-hmm.
This particular model here on the back, and I had a picture of it. This is the same one that it happened with. We were working in the lab one day, and Carr was a brilliant person, very simple person, very close to nature. And in fact, he had put in a patent for a spaceship a long time ago, and the patent office said, "Well, you've got levitation in here, you can, and sympathetic vibrations, resonant frequencies. You can't do that. We can't give you a patent on those things. You take the levitation device out of your patent, and we'll give you a patent on an amusement device," which he wound up with. He finally got a patent for an amusement device. But he then wrote a book and put all the secrets, if you want to call them secrets, the discoveries of levitation in the book. And I have the original copy, and I recently put it on the internet, and it's free for anybody that wants to get it. It's called Dimensions of Mystery by Otis Carr. And he explains it in such a way that he's talking about nature. He's talking about how hummingbirds relate to leaves, and how trees at certain times change colors. And to the average scientist, or the average person really, it wouldn't make much sense because it sounds like a bunch of mumbo-jumbo poetry and everything. But what he is explaining, and he told me later, that when the person's consciousness raises to a high enough level to see what I'm writing about, they'll understand how simple levitation is. There's really nothing to it. And they will then, that will be perhaps the time it will come back into our system, and we'll allow it to happen. So back to this guy here. We were in the lab one day, and we were using vibrations to resonant frequency. We were reaching resonant frequencies to excite this little craft. And all you could hear was a hum at first, and then pretty soon you couldn't hear anything. And I remember touching the surface of this, and this is T6 aluminum. It's a very good grade of aluminum. And I remember touching it, and it felt very solid. But as the frequencies increased, and actually our hair, all the guys in the lab, our hair started kind of coming up. And we knew it was a form of magnetic power going on. We didn't understand it as well as Carr did anyway. But pretty soon in touching it, I found that it was like jello, that it was just going, my fingers could kind of punch into it. And I said, well, I discovered then that my brain is not the same as my mind. My brain said that's impossible. But my mind says, keep going, man. There's something going on here that you don't understand. And I stuck my fingers, all 4 fingers, right through the skin of this craft here, right inside of it. And I went back and forth like this. And at that moment in time, it felt completely natural to me. Oh yeah, sure, that's because, and I could see what it was that was enabling me to understand what was happening. I later learned to put it into words so I could explain it to somebody. And that was that we're not solid objects. We're all energy. All of us are one big energy field. And we're in frames of reference all of you are a part of me, all of me is a part of you, etc. And that